Thank you to the Source of Creation for being this healing session, this live webinar, for being everything in the whole universe and the whole multiverse, for being, and for all the expressions of life and all the expressions of that one being, particularly to the ancestors. So to our dear ancestors and to all their details and the areas that concern them, and for all the areas where the reality that we experience and that we'll be experiencing in today's webinar as we go into these finer realms of creation, all the junction points between our reality and that level of perspective that says, like, the only thing that exists is that which is seen by the senses. Luckily, not everybody's ancestors. My mom's right here and she's with us, but you know, there are generations back where nothing exists except for the senses, except what is seen by the senses. And that creates a kind of a spot of contention, or a spot where there's a little need for increased flexibility. So we're just putting some loving in our prayer. We're putting some loving attention on those spots. And thank you to the divine and everyone who's engaged in this live webinar today for blessing our session with the ability to work powerfully and concisely and really effectively. We want to get into these deepest levels of creation and see what's there. And thank you always, always, with so much gratitude and so much reverence, to the eternal tradition of wisdom, to the great holy tradition of wisdom, without whose structuring, orderly, and protective presence in these sessions, the flow of knowledge would not exist. So we can't thank them enough. Can't thank that area of creation enough. Thank you. All right, so we'll begin. The first thing is, I want to do just a little for the new people, and I forgot to do this last night, so hopefully new people last night will watch today's session too. Just a short review or recap of what is energy healing. So energy healing is that ability to focus attention concisely and intelligently to produce a specific effect in the field of consciousness and in the field of life. And everything is consciousness, everything, even physical material is also consciousness. So we focus attention in such a way as to activate or enliven the qualities of consciousness in its purest form in that area, whatever it is. So if there's a symptom or a problem, just bringing attention to the problem is step number one to bring like the flow of life force into that area and support the beginnings, at least, of the healing process. And then depending on the angle at which we approach it and how we expand on that can determine what kind of results we get as far as eliminating the symptom. Okay, that's energy healing in a nutshell. And we have also, it would be good to look at the landscape, that we have the range of existence from very dense material, hard rocks at the surface, and then the finer reality of everything that exists down to the finer, finest, and then to the field of pure being. So we have a kind of a vertical axis that we're looking at there, the y-axis. Then we've got the x-axis, which ranges from darker, unpleasant level of experience to very heavenly, very bright, light level of experience. And that range, that x-axis, resides in the manifest level of creation, in the manifest level. In the absolute level, the level of pure being, the absolute is absolutely beneficent. It's absolutely soft and light and pure, and it's just looking to express itself. All right, so Today's session, we're going to look at a little brief, that was the review of energy healing. Now the recap of yesterday. So in yesterday's session, let's see, we talked about, oh yes, our group, our collective, and we're recapping, we're doing it as we recap, we're actually doing, is awareness into the collective of our group and recapping basically all the group healings that took place. And that includes a coherence, particularly toward the end of yesterday's session. The group became energetically very close. And there was this, it was in the process of becoming close was initiated by the source of creation, by the mother of creation, wanted to bring everybody like in a big hug, you could say. But what happened is, as we became close, the quality of light energy of the group became very soft and very light, with a kind of a warm white light that was sort of knitting the group together. And that was very sweet with a lot of integration. Also, I'm working backwards for some reason. So that was the last thing that happened. What happened right before that was our group was able to draw in and surround itself with its own potential, basically. And I described that differently yesterday, but after a night's sleep, more integrated, this potential is the celestial reality of all of us collectively. So it felt very much like a kind of angelic pillow or something that was around us, a very soft, very sweet, very high resonation light that was around the group. And it acts as an aligning factor and an integrating factor for the group to keep the flow of our direction in this session on a very high level, on moving into those areas that are most appropriate and most useful for the purpose of our overall intention, which we found out last night was, number one, as a collective to create peace, to support and promote the power shift which is taking place on Earth. There's a very important shift right now with regards to those influences which are really calling the shots on Earth right now. So that was kind of exciting. And that shift over is in the direction of the power going into the hands of those people who have the capabilities and knowledge, of course, but also the inner construct to be able to support highest development for everyone on Earth. And that means opportunities and resources for everyone, so that everyone has the equal, at least, or at least maximum to their capacity, ability to live to their full potential. So we had that like a ship. We were like a ship with this soft outer coating. And prior to that, there were integrations and healings for everyone with regards to, let's see, there were heart healings, as I recall, and there was a healing for the cerebellum, and I'm just looking out in the group, and most people are repeats from last night, which is great. But for those people who are new today, we're doing a scan of the physiology, and we're looking at skeletal system, lymphatic system, circulatory system, and then also heart chakra also for ancestors, a lot of heart chakra work for ancestors, and cerebellum. And cerebellum particularly, that's a filtration area of the brain, and that gives the opportunity to restructure things so that the impulses or the pieces of information from the environment, which are at that rasa level, that very, very subtle flavor level of creation, can come in and it can be received and not get filtered out of the experience, the field of experience. It's very important for today's subject, which is exploring the subtle realms of creation. We need to be able to get in and get the goods, you know, perceive the good stuff. So I'm just watching for a minute as I'm kind of feeling that moving into the group and feeling the restructuring taking place in the physiologies, and especially those ancestors. I feel as if we got a flag up on the ancestors today, because when we were doing the prayer, there was a little bit of a slowing. We slowed down just a little bit at that point in the prayer, and that was important. So for the ancestors particularly, what I'm feeling with the ancestors is it's through our ancestors that we connect with the rest of humanity. because if we go back, right, enough generations, then we start having ancestors in common with quite a lot of people. So this healing that was done for our physiologies just this morning for new people coming in, and for last night, people at the level of DNA, at the molecular level, is supporting, I see now it's instrumental. I didn't see it last night, but it's instrumental for this power shift, the power shift on Earth. It feels a little bit like a cry from humanity, that there's the people of Earth are so ready, and they realize that we realize as a collective that the time has come for a higher level of an Earth's administration. The Earth has become small enough through the internet that we're all very connected, and we need a level of administration which is at right. I can feel some of you thinking, oh well, we've got the cosmic administration from, set up through the global country of world peace, which is absolutely correct and absolutely right. And that's the level. But the thing is, the structure of the administration through the global country of world peace has been present for already 10 years or more, 10, 20, but the power hasn't been shifted over yet. So that's what we need to do. We need to shift it over. Anyway, that's what part of the work that we're doing, which should be fun to see. Okay, let's see. The other piece of review from last night actually ties into a question from somebody who was here last night. And that is that we were looking at, in the field, okay, so we're looking at the fine realms of creation. And we know that there's an x-axis from kind of the darker, more hellish realms of creation, if you want, to the more heavenly, nicer realms. And there are souls, or there are aspects of being, we can say structures of being, which resonate with all these different realms. And I did a little research on it, and I found out that different systems divide the realms differently. Like there's a Buddhist system that divides to, like, I think 31 realms. And then there's a Vedic system that divides to five levels. And so there are different ways of dividing and different ways of perceiving. However, the important thing is that we're really looking at a continuum of consciousness, and we're looking at individuals whose energy frequency resonates at different frequencies along that continuum. And even as human beings in our physical bodies, we have a tendency to hold self-definition that resonates either more with the darker end of creation or more with the lighter end. My children call it, some people have agreeable personalities and some people have disagreeable personalities, and they're quite sure they have disagreeable personalities. But I find them absolutely charming. I don't know, maybe it's just being a mom. But anyway, so the point is that yesterday's work was about balance, supporting and maintaining a very high level of balance, a very, very fine level of balance. And that was part of the healing work also, was to support everyone's ability to find their center point. And the reason is that as human beings, we have this, all the beings of creation have some constraints and limitations, but as human beings, our constraints and limitations do not stop us from being able to reach out and embrace the whole range of this field of manifestation if we're centered in balance. Because from the finest point of balance, and I'm just checking everybody now, from the finest point of balance, it's possible for consciousness to expand the point of balance, to embrace the whole range of expression. It's very interesting. It's very powerful. Oh, I see questions coming in. Oh, that's exciting. So that's also part of the recap from yesterday. Okay, let me answer this question that came up from yesterday's thing. So the question came up toward the end, wanting to understand this balance that you spoke about between the light and the dark. And earlier this week, she was reading about Trump's visit to Puerto Rico and the things he said that weren't appropriate, and feeling sorry for him. She was just feeling sympathy for him. And it seems as if her perception is that it's his nature to be who he is and to sometimes say and do things that are inappropriate. And it's, of course, the nature of the media because the media is controlled in its own special ways, is also not in full balance, right? So it's the nature of the media to ridicule. So we've got these opposing values, and they're almost as if sitting on the two sides of the balance point a little bit. And she's wondering if the feeling that she's having of feeling sorry, just feeling sympathy. You can come in here if you want. Okay, extra seats. The feeling of sympathy is a response, a reflection of her coming into balance. And absolutely it is. Absolutely it is, because these darks and lights, this again is a little bit of a recap from yesterday, work together. Together they form wholeness. So if you've got a symptom of illness and it's dragging down the physiology and it's dragging down the psychology and the mind and everything, the emotions, then it's like weighted on the negative side. And what we do in energy healing is we go look at that and determine how would we create a quality of consciousness that would exactly match that, the opposite of it, to create back to wholeness again. And so that's created in the field of consciousness, and they're brought together, and then together they work like an engine to the individual locates themselves in the point of balance, and these two dark and light energies work together to manifest forth a transformation of health. And I'm just seeing this, I'm just looking into the field and supporting everyone's ability to find that point of balance, and to know that it's simply a matter of seeing the imbalance, attending to it, right? And then allowing awareness to rest in the point of balance. In the point of balance, being expresses itself through the entire y-axis. Does that make sense? When you're at the point of balance, being is found at every point in the process, even all the way up to the physical. So we say, well, being is at the source of creation and it's behind everything that manifests. No, actually, being is everything that manifests. It is everything. It is everything, but we don't experience it that way if we're a little bit on one side or a little bit on the other side. We have to be in the middle. So very nice, finding that point of balance. And when we find the point of balance, because some people in the group are doing this right now, they're looking to heal their imbalances or their symptoms. So it's a very delicate. The point of balance is oh so tender. It's oh so sweet. And that there's an energy signature of that point of exact balance, that very, very, very fine balance. And that point, that energy signature is going to the center of our group. And it's sitting as a kind of a stable foundation for all the work that we do today. And henceforth, and may that energy signature impress itself upon your awareness so that you always have access to it. All right. So we have the darks and the lights working together like that. And they churn the ocean of consciousness, and they support the expression of divine intention all the way through from the subtlest levels of creation to the densest levels. Which brings us to the next question. Thanks for being with me, everybody. And then I see we got more questions coming here, but I'm taking these first because they came in before. So this question has to do with Las Vegas. And yesterday we spent quite a bit of time doing some really deep healing for the Las Vegas situation and looking at the relationship between that dark and light dynamic and what happened in Las Vegas. So here's Las Vegas, recent clearing for more growth. How does the art of Western or country music entertainers, Western or country music entertainers, and listening at Route 91 Harvest Festival 2017 tie into the mass killing? That's the first question. That's such a good question. The way I look at it was, and I have to do, for those who are new today, I have to do just a brief recap of our healing for Las Vegas, because that was important. Las Vegas, as I pointed out in a previous video, is a key location in the US, maybe the world, for archives of specific information about the manifesting process. So what that means is specific information about how the light energies and the dark energies work together in balance, how we stay balanced and they work together, that engine that churns the ocean of consciousness, what those mechanics are that allow very specific intentions to move forward and be manifested. And that's in the hills, it's in the mountains around Las Vegas. Maybe I chose the wrong backdrop because I do have some Las Vegas mountains, but anyway, not to take time to change. And in my video, it's about 7 minutes long or something. It goes into really fine detail of how that information is encoded in the mountains, in the hills around there and around that area. So what happens is people come from all over the world, all over the country to try their hand at the manifesting process and just see, you know, like, well, this is where the laws of nature for this are most lively. So let's see what I can create. Let's see how lucky I can get. So the thing about the fact that it was country western concert, in my opinion, means that the darkness, which was rising up at that time, wanted to hit in a specific angle into the collective of the US. So it went to a place where it wasn't just, you know, a small town, a lot of local people, and I shouldn't say just, anybody dying is not just, but it was a group who had come from all over, who'd come from all over the US, had gathered there. So it wasn't just, he wasn't just hitting into a local group, he was hitting into representatives of our whole country and our whole world. And the country music, Western culture, is what was being hit. This actually ties in also to the Trump question, which I realize now I didn't fully answer, which is that culture is manifestation of the fatherly value of consciousness. Culture, order, protection, you know, these qualities are the qualities of that are upheld by the male aspect of our world. So by hitting country music, we're hitting into the heart of the American culture, because country music is just about as American as you get, like even more American than pop music. It's really the quintessential music of the common American people, you know. And I'm not saying everybody loves country music, but I'm saying that the kind of country music that was going on at that concert isn't made anywhere else in the world. It's made in America. And it grew out of that whole cowboy tradition and also the old traditions that were brought over from Europe and Africa. And so eventually morphed into that, but it became a very American expression of American music, more so than rock and roll, more so than pop music even. So it was a hit right into the heart of American culture. It was a hit at father, at those qualities of that leader. And our father leader at this time, President Trump, is this, he, as an individual, he has come into this position to be an active participant in the breaking down part of the divine dialogue, because this is actually supportive of our efforts here. We are working to shift the energy, the power over from the old power, which was not taking into consideration the needs and requirements of human beings to live their full potential. And we're shifting it over to a level of world administration, global administration, which does take that into account. And his role is to break down the old structure. And he's doing a wonderful job of it, frankly. As far as I'm concerned, I approve. Every time he says something and the media flips out and says, oh, that was so wrong, then it's like, well, yeah, there you go, you know? And it gives us fodder to create out of the level of our consciousness those exact qualities of energy that come and match up with that negativity and produce an effect which is actually divinity manifested on earth. Because that's what we're doing. We're doing it. You're doing it. Good job, everybody. Okay, so that was the country music going in and taking a hit taking a hit right into the heart of American culture there. Okay, and then the second part is, here's some experiences from last night. There was a geometric pattern locked and being exposed in Las Vegas. Yes, that is absolutely true. That, we, as much as, I have great respect for the spiritual community in Las Vegas and for their abilities. It's very powerful what they're doing. And they're doing a lot of cleanup work right now, folks. So we're helping them out with that. But there are certain patterns that are locked in Las Vegas that are very, I would say they lock in a tendency to keep awareness structured in the relative. If you go, there's all the colors and the lights and the shows and everything on the surface, and the drinking, which keeps awareness dull to its finer reality and so forth. So all that stuff is locked in there, and it got exposed because it came completely unaware and nobody was expecting. I sense some kind of change from a long time geopattern holding back much growth and getting replaced by a more flexible geometric pattern with a major change in heavenly dispensations for human and angelic collective consciousness. Yes, and I got to read that question earlier, but it makes even more sense to me now that by bringing this tragedy coming right into the heart of Las Vegas, then allowed all the healers and all the well-wishers and all the good Christians and all the people who pray and care and give blood and everything to send all of their loving, angelic, divine energy over to the Las Vegas area. So right now what's happening is there's a big field of love around Las Vegas. And that is the bright side energy that's going to meet that darkness. So people are doing it. Even if people don't believe in consciousness, even if they don't believe in anything they don't see with their senses, if they're at home praying for Las Vegas, then they're adding to that collective effect, which is going into this place. So what are we looking at it now? What have we got? We've got a location on Earth where the laws of nature highly support the manifesting process, manifesting directly from consciousness intentionally. And then what happens is it takes a big hit on one side, which causes a response from the collective of all this light and love and beauty and support and sweetness coming in, and wholeness is created. And in that wholeness, our role in our healing circle is to hold the point of balance. Because it is the balance which is going to allow the ultimate outcome from this. And this, you'll see the ripples are going to be really interesting. They're going to go there's going to be worldwide ripples in the power structure on our Earth. We're holding the balance. And keep as much as possible, if we can create, I'm asking being, can we make our beautiful centralized balance point, which is so delicate and so precise and refined. Okay, here's a good question coming into, I'm going to put that up there. I'm going to read that in 1 second. Let me finish the sentence. So refined that it acts like a magnet, and all the well wishes and all the good that's coming in those individuals, instead of standing on their side and saying, oh, this was the most it was a terrible tragedy, but instead of holding a sideways view of it, offering their love and well wishes and blessings and prayers, but also staying in that point of balance. Here's the question. If we're all part of being, why would we want a global hierarchy, including the world government for world peace, deciding what is right or wrong for us? Good question. Why we are all trying to balance the dark and light, right? Everyone is, right? It seems like we need to be self-empowered. Yes. I agree. And I think that ultimately what's going to happen is the resources. I feel that the global administration, whoever's like most wealthy or most powerful, it doesn't really matter that much. But what's really important is that from an individual level, people have the resources and the opportunities to manifest their destiny and their dharma. That's what's important. And that's what's not happening now. Yeah, I agree. as far as the structure that Maharishi set up, that may or may not actually end up being the power structure. You know, I have no idea, but I do know that the way it's set up right now, that the individuals who have the resources to actually control or sway, you know, countries to go to war with each other, or, you know, how much resources are kept away from certain countries. Africa, I've been crying for Africa for, you know, a decade or more since I realized what's actually going on over there. You know, that those individuals who are in a position to do some level of tremendous good, and instead are using their resources to have a destructive effect on mankind, geoengineering and all that stuff, that shifts over from them to whoever. And yesterday, you should just know, yesterday the desire went out that nature should just decide. If, you know, if some individuals, if it is going to be a group of individuals or something who are holding that sort of larger level of wealth and power, that it be just somebody who knows what they're doing, you know, somebody who loves people a little bit, who looks at humans as nice people, instead of just looking at them as, you know, cattle or whatever, you know. That's the important thing. But thank you for that question. That was a good point. And thanks for reminding me, because yesterday that was what came up, was that it needs to be in the hands of the divine, basically. That whoever that person is, they are in balance, and they are a perfect representative embodiment of divine intelligence, so that every decision that's made, and you know, everyone is going to help some people and hurt others, but that every decision is made as close to supportive of everyone as possible. The shortest distance from the home, from home to home. Okay, now we go into all these amazing things, you guys. Yesterday, no questions came in, and one very good question came in actually, but today we've got lots of questions, so I'm just going to look at the questions. Here we go. Oh, and I should just do another little piece of recap. So one of the things we discovered was that in the very, very finest realm of manifest creation, we were looking at the Saguna Brahm level of creation. So the Paraprakriti level, where all the laws of nature sit as yet unmanifested, as yet in the form of just pure potential. And this is where the resource comes to heal the body, and to heal the world, and to do great things. So we were looking at that area, and we were, as a collective, we were really spending a lot of time soaking in that area and exploring that area, and noticing that it has basically a kind of a spherical form. It was interesting. There's like a center sun, there's a light in the very center, and then this radiance that emanates from that center, and it comes out in a kind of very beautiful sort of patterns of web-like patterns. And it has always looked like a fabric to me, but last night it was looking spherical for the first time, which was very cool. And I really appreciated that. Anyway, so, and at each node, at each of the nodes, there is a very, very subtle, like each node is in that state of perfect balance, but the potential of the light and the dark are in each node. It's a very fascinating field. It was just beautiful. Anyway, you can go back for a lot more detail on that if you want to look at yesterday's recording, which everyone will get. So first person says that I look and feel beautiful. Thank you. Like the little whips. And thank you for that. And one person saying, yes, they feel the power of a shift, very subtle, but very profound, even with all that's going on in the world. Yeah. But the direction that the shift takes is going to be dependent on the capability of all of us who are looking at what's going on to maintain our balance. That's why it's good that we establish that at the outset of yesterday's session and at the outset of this one. Okay. Hello from England. I wonder if my new grandson is struggling due to being here in the denser realm after perhaps being in the more subtle, more refined realm. Absolutely, all babies do. Please ignore the question if it does not have to do with today's talk. Okay, or tonight's talk. It's nighttime in England. Yeah, but the thing is that, children also always know, they always know when they come into the human form that they're coming into this space where they're going to have an opportunity to work with the entire field, with the light and the dark. And, I think many times it happens that people, when they're in the spirit realm or before they take the human form, they feel so invincible and so powerful, and so manifesting is so effortless. You barely think of something and it's just there like that, and they think, I'm going to go be a human and it's going to be just like that. I'll be in the earthly realm, but I'll just manifest anything so effortlessly. It's going to be so cool and easy. And they get here and they find that there's entropy in the environment, and the entropy makes it harder to do that in this field than it was doing it without the physical body. And they realize that they're going to have to overcome some of those entropic energies, and that overcoming them is part of the learning process, and that the specific entropic energies that they are facing in this lifetime are the very ones that will support their, again, it's like a specific kind of negativity. Each person comes in with their own mix, right? And it's going to force them to come up with a value of positivity that's an exact match to that specific negativity in order to produce wholeness. And as they do that, they do have the potential to find their way to balance. And if they do that, then divinity flows without restriction. So it's all doable. It's all doable. And as I'm explaining that, he's also understanding it. I know he's very little and he doesn't talk yet, but he gets it. He knows that our attention is on him, and making sure that he gets that download so that it's clear to him, and that he understands the premise of balance as the key. And the trick is, how do I stay in my balance and at the same time be activating and bringing up a lot of positivity to meet the negativity? The answer is, if the negativity is already there. As I mentioned yesterday, the negativity tends to speak first. So the negativity is already there, so things are already out of balance on that side. So if we bring up positivity, all that does is bring us back into balance, so it's fine. You can do that. That was his question, by the way. What a smart little guy. He's a little smarty pants, isn't he? Asking a question like that. Well. Anyway, the thing about balance, here's another question. The thing about balance, I offer a quote from Maharishi. When sattva rises, tamas also rises to maintain the balance. What I'm finding is that one can choose one's reality. Yes, we can choose the reality, but here's the deal. And this is part of a question that came up last night, was, can it sometimes happen if a person goes too much balance on the positivity, that they end up getting pulled back into the negativity? And that can also happen. I know, case in point, I know this happened to me. I mean, I was living pure. Since I was 20 years old, I came here, life of pure devotion. No drinking, no smoking, no dating, until I got married. Oops, there goes the telephone. And, living very sattvic level of life, only pure devotion, just purest devotion at the highest level at all times for everyone, raising my children. I couldn't have done more. I couldn't have done physically, mentally, and emotionally. I could not have done more to live at a very high level of sattva and keep my thinking and my awareness at a very high level. And then at some point, I was so overbalanced in the positivity that I was out of touch with the point of balance where divinity manifests. I lost that connection to the point of manifestation of divinity in the relative. And so nature started slapping me, one slap after another. We lost our hot water. My father died. Then Maharishi died. I was working 140 hours a week, realizing, I'm only getting paid 43 cents an hour. Oh, but it costs $300 to take the kids to the doctor. There were things that were happening that weren't working for us. Oh, and I broke 5 bones. Did I mention that? Yeah. Anyway, so a lot went on during that time. And I realized that nature was doing that because I wasn't supposed to just hang out in the divine heavenly realms. That is a waste of the physical form. That is the waste of a human life. The human life is to embody divinity. And embodiment of divinity in the flesh, in the physical form. And divinity can only do that if we're able to find the balance point and then transcend on the balance point to embrace the entire range of material expression. Then divinity can wend its way into all the little nooks and crannies of the relative and fill them up with divine light, fill them up with knowingness. And when that happens, something magical happens. Something huge happens at that point. Then divinity is seen in every hard knot of creation. Every hard rock is seen as an expression of divinity. And it's bigger than being more like just somehow it doesn't fully honor the condition of human. At some point, the soul wants to just hang out strictly, completely, totally, and exclusively in the heavenly realms, in Brahmaloka or in some heavenly realm. That's fine. But at that point, it doesn't make sense to have the human body, because the human body is what lets us bring that divinity and those energies of the heavenly realms even into the hard knot areas of creation. So that's sort of a unique constraint of being human. Anyway, that's how I understand it. This is my understanding now. This is based on my experience and based on the work that I'm doing. This is what I understand. Maybe it's different. Maybe it's different for different people. I don't know. Maybe we need to explore more about that, because it's a good question. You like it? Okay, here's another one. If culture represents the fatherly values, like order, culture, what are the motherly values? So mother brings in the values of nature and nurture and chaos. Mother brings in the values of, she brings in the values of, the way I think of it is the inner stroke of the divine dialogue versus the outer stroke of the divine dialogue, basically. We start at home, right? The hero's journey. The hero starts at home, and home is good and home is fine, but something happens to home. It gets lost, and the hero must venture out into the unknown. And this whole venture out into the unknown is a feminine part of the process. So very requires a lot of creative thinking and uncertainty, and then but resources, nurture, mother nurtures. So in that part of the process, if you want to think of the various famous great stories, mythic stories of all time, the Ram goes and he gets to meet the great seers and rishis, and each one gives him different gifts, different powers, different skill sets, different knowledge. So the resources are gained, all that nurture is gained in there, but it's also the unknown. And then the soul goes down into the underworld, has to go down and face one's greatest fear. And at that point, what we find is we find father destroyed. We find culture and order and society and all the structures in their state as not being functional. And what the hero has to do is to nurture what's left of it, whatever was able to survive that crushing, and reconstruct it in conjunction with everything that was learned in the path along the way, and bring it out in a new form, and to return home victorious. But now it's a new home because it's a new self. The whole self is completely transformed through the process. And that divine dialogue is going on constantly. And that is also expressed, we're just looking at the same thing over and over and over again here. That's expressed by the dark and the light too. And it's not to say that the dark is necessarily bad or evil or wrong, because this quote that I mentioned yesterday twice actually, but here it comes again, by Maharishi, which is, an enlightened man is able to use even the destructive laws of nature work in his favor. I think that's approximately the quote. Even the destructive laws of nature act in favor of a person who's enlightened. So it doesn't mean that the destructive laws of nature are bad. It just means that they are present because that part of the process of transformation requires the breaking down. And that also was related to this question about Las Vegas that sensed some kind of change from a long time geo pattern that was holding back a lot of growth. And so, yeah, that has to break down in order for the new structure to come up. Good question. Yeah, question again?
Yeah, we're so much about balance and how do we keep what's left and what's right. in sense of vertigo. I one time ruptured my eardrums, and I could not. I mean, I was so disoriented, and it's come back every once in a while. And it's just like everything's spinning, and I can't keep left from right. You know, so I want to gather all the information maybe or something, but it's like gone.
Thank you for this question. So just to repeat, in case it didn't come in on the mic, his question is that sometimes he suffers from vertigo, and had in the past had some damage to the eardrums, and so has trouble even identifying at that time when those experiences come up, even identifying left from right. And I'm telling the question because I know there are other people on the session who are having the same experience. So thank you for that. And so this is a beautiful example of, you know, when a soul is at that very kind of high state of spiritual development, then what happens is we start approaching the problem. We start approaching the core or the soul of the issue from a more intimate level. Because if we're talking about balance and realizing that balance is one of the great keys to being able to live a quality of life as a human that's going to be at a very high level, then having an experience that directly attacks that, it's not dissimilar, is it, from a gunman coming in and shooting at the heart of American culture. I mean, right? He could have shot in at some other kind of event, or maybe you know, I don't know, some other event he could have gotten in. Yeah, he could have, you know, he could have come and done some shooting at the NRA convention or something. Who knows what? But instead, it was this. He was coming into this core, and what happens is when the part that the symptom is reflecting the exact quality that needs to be met with the balance itself, then what it means is, in order to create the antidote, we create a marriage of balance and those positivities, whatever light medicines or angelic structures of intelligence, knowingness, whatever values of knowingness marry with the value of balance in order to amend the symptom of being out of balance. And what that means is balance is, yes, beautiful. This lady's saying like a wildfire needed to regrow. Right. Beautiful. And also sometimes firefighters will fight with another fire, right? They'll make a wall and start another fire heading toward the first fire, and then the two fires meet and they burn themselves out. And so that brings us to this situation where we're creating, and why I think this question was so beautiful and brilliant, is that we're looking at how do we even better, even more discriminatively balance, find that point of balance within our own consciousness in order to support the flow of unrestricted knowingness, unrestricted divine being. And that point, there's got to be a point with it also where it expands, that point of balance expands to embrace all points. And so having the symptom being that one feels out of balance, it causes the light values of creation to have to be balance oriented, and they fall back into the space of balance where individual wholeness is stabilized. So it's balance reflecting back on its own nature, basically. And that is beautiful, very powerful. That's also going in like a kind of a download for the center of the group, because we already created balance in our center. And now balance folding in on its own nature is happening there. Thank you. That was awesome. It's bringing the value of balance up to a whole nother level of functionality and power and stability and self-knowing. I want to go to the next question, but I feel I still need to say one more thing about this, and that is that when balance folds in on its own nature, it knows itself as infinite being. So balance becomes that expression, pure expression of divine being. That gives it life. That creates life. It's like the birth or maybe the rebirth, or maybe just the recognition of life that's already been and always will be. And that life becomes integrated. It's becoming integrated with us. This ties into something that happened last night that I didn't give expression to, and I'm really glad it came up. I noticed there were some very interesting fine modifications taking place in the very core of the physiology. And I realize now that this is it, that the self-identification, our ability to know ourselves, is being overlaid or modified or married to or integrated with the life force of balance. Balance as a life form. Human beings are, all human beings are, so all human beings, it goes not just to our group, but it goes to the whole world. All human beings are those beings that stand between the animal world of experience and the celestial world of experience. That's what a human being is. We bridge the gap. That's going to be the topic of our next webinar. We're going to do healings for that. That should be interesting. Anyway, for right now, this, this stabilization and integration of balance as an all-time feature of the nature of humanity had been lost to humans as a collective. Somehow we lost touch with that. So that's being reestablished, not just for our group, but our group, our healing circle is so powerful. It's going out to everyone. It's going out to the whole world. It's like radiating from the center of our circle out to the whole creation and out to that lovely golden field of celestial being that's the area of exploration. All right, next question. Oh, so many good questions coming in one after another. Are you saying that human life requires us to remain balanced at a point where we are always neutralizing newly uprising negativity? That is negativity that is rising up to be healed. Yes. Therefore, we are all healers. Yes. Constantly learning to invoke new kinds of healing energy as part of our evolution. Yes. Woo! Yes, that was such a great question. Yes, that's what we're doing. I mean, we are choosing to do that. Not everybody chooses to do that. Some people are like, oh, let's go muck around in the dark stuff, right? And some people are like, oh, I just want to stay in my garden and, just be happy, and I don't, It's okay. It all balances. Yeah, that was a beautiful question. Well articulated. Thank you for that beautiful articulation. I don't need to say much about that because that was so good in and of itself. Okay, but then here's another one. But Maharishi said that dark doesn't exist. The dark is just lack of light. Oh, that's a great, beautiful. And yes, that's true. And that when awareness is able to maintain that point of wholeness, where we're not looking at dark as like a bad thing. We're just looking at these two strokes of the divine dialogue, that there's the stroke of the divine dialogue that's important for breaking, like the way the water interacts with the rocks over time. It softens up all their hard edges, right? So it's destructing the rocks. It's making them soft all over. But it doesn't mean that's bad. That's just like how nature works. But from this point of stabilizing one's sense of self and awareness in that really, really delicate balance point, then what happens is we see that at every point in creation, the whole web of life, there is both light and dark working together like a little engine. It's causing the manifestation of this relative field of creation. And that's even in the points that we say, well, I felt, someone was saying to me yesterday that yes, I remember, my friend said that his mother had gone to church and that this being of light came to her in the church and spoke to her. And so even beings like that appear to be just full of light and full of holiness, they also have their combination of light and dark that they're working with that allows them to manifest to as high a level as they can. I'm seeing something I have to share. So in this finer level of creation, there are forms of life force that resonate more with one end of the spectrum and more with the other end of the spectrum. And in those places, like the ones that resonate up with the very high end, what it means is it's like 90% resonating in a very high light frequency with their little 10% negativity so that they can still be a manifest thing. And then at the darker end, you might find something that's 90% negativity with one little 10% positivity, which is just enough that it can be a manifest thing. At the point of being, everything collapses into one being, just into being. It's interesting. It looks interesting. And that makes sense why the whole celestial field has a spherical nature, because at each point you get the combinations, right? You get 50-50 and 50-50 and 99-1 and 99-1, different points in the process. It's very interesting. Okay, I'm sure there's a lot more that could be said about that. Okay, next one. Thank you. I hope that answered the question. Love you. Culture maintained by women, according to Vedic tradition, yes. When women falls out of Dharma, culture is lost. Beautiful point, beautiful point, beautiful point. And that very much relates to this inward stroke of the divine dialogue. That what's happened, and this is what I've seen and why we tend to be dealing with so much negativity at this time in our world and in our culture, is that the inward stroke of the divine dialogue has not been seen as divine, but it's been looked at as awful. Because often what happens is the part of the process where women's physiologies are refined. We have a tendency to have more refined physiology. So we see where something isn't quite right in the structure. Something isn't right in the home. Remember the hero's journey? He starts at home, right? And for some reason, he can't stay home because something needs to be restructured. So he has to leave the home that he knows. And what happens is mother's power, particularly her ability to see in the home and what needs to be done and what's correct, is at a very high level. Father is more oriented towards the relative. Now I know that I don't mean to sound sexist or anything, because I know there's a whole range. It's a whole mandala, but we're looking at these as principles, all right? We're looking at them as principles. That women see those spots where some more refinement could take place, or some realignment could take place, or something needs to be put in order. But so what mother does is she points on it. She goes, something needs to be put in order right there. And as soon as you point to that thing, it has to unhinge from its bound structure, bound into the reality, has to unhinge so that it can be put into a better state of order and then reconnected properly. So that's the mother role. But what's happened over the long course of time is that as a culture, I feel that we've sort of withdrawn a little bit or been a little bit repelled by that part of the process, because it seems like it's breaking down. It's like, 5 generations of my family built this beautiful home, and now it's too old and dilapidated, and it's going to have to be raised, and we're going to have to build a modern home, and it won't be built with the same nice materials and so on, so like that. I mean, that's just an example, but there's a tendency to kind of want to hold on to that original structure. The hero's at home. Why doesn't he just stay home? He's going to end up back at home again, right? Why go through the hero's journey at all? But it's necessary. And so the thing is that because of that, a lot of the healing work that I've done over the last year in my distance energy work sessions and in these webinars has been to support the ancestors. Thank you. This is where the ancestors come in, to not be freaked out by that part of the journey, to not be upset. If we think of the story of Ram, when Ram is like, oh, I'm exiled. Okay, cool. I'm on. I'm down for that. Goodbye. But meanwhile, everybody else is like, oh, what? They're tearing their hair out. No, he was going to be our king tomorrow. And so, there's that element of like, no, people are just like, no, let's not break down. Let's not put someone in the presidency who has a tendency to break down, to break down the old structure. But it has to be. It has to be. So what women are doing now, what we can do is the feminine value, and I don't mean just women, because men have feminine value in them too, but what the feminine value can do now is it can strike the balance and understand that this is divine and this is divine. It's all divine. It's all divine. And the more we're able to maintain balance at every single point in the journey and not get frightened right at that spot where you have to face the dragon, right? There's that spot right before the big transformation where the hero is alone and he has to fight the dragon alone. He has to face his greatest fear like that. Even at that point, not to flip out and go, but just go, okay, where's my balance? Where's the balance? Oh, this is the negativity I'm facing now. Okay, where's my balance? Because I can bring in the positivity, right? So that's how women do it. And we're the first ones to see it. It's very cool. Good question. Okay, so my husband is saying we need a healing right now involving subtle realms. So I think because the ancestor question came up, we're going to take a moment and do a little healing for the ancestors, but I'm just saying there's a lot more questions coming in too, my darling. So I want to make sure I get to everybody's questions and we don't have oodles of time. So for the ancestors, we're going to go through, and this will be almost like in providing or offering the protocol, which I have developed over the last many months or more, to support the ancestors and particularly the women to be able to traverse that inner stroke of the divine dialogue with grace, and to maintain what we're doing. Oh, this is beautiful. We are good. We are powerful. That amazing balance that we have created out of in our collective is the sort of the heart of our collective is being placed at each point along the continuum of the divine dialogue, of the hero's journey of transformation, even and particularly at those finest points when the hero is farthest from home and when the transformation is at maximum. And this is also going out to Las Vegas. This is helping Las Vegas because right now Las Vegas is in that dynamic point. And it's also going out to Bali. And I'm just feeling a lot of energy moving through the collective of our group and out to the ancestors. And it feels like it's an energy that's full of compassion. And what I'm doing is I'm finding the balance in myself and supporting it also being full of knowingness, raining showers of knowingness into the hearts of the ancestors. A continuation of yesterday's ancestor healing, because there was some modifications in the heart. So the heart doesn't become anxious and it doesn't become freaked out, but it's able to maintain that knowingness that this is part of the action necessary to support a level of transformation, which is absolutely necessary and absolutely accelerating at this time in humanity. The degree of transformation that humanity is undergoing right now is increasing at an accelerating pace. So we need greater tools. We need greater stability in being, in knowingness, raining showers of knowingness into the heart for the ancestors, going back at least 12 generations I'm seeing. And I'm feeling waves of energy from the ancestors and gratitude, and all their sweet gratitude gets offered back to being. It gets offered back at the feet of the eternal tradition of wisdom and at the feet of the mother of creation for that role of that aspect of ourselves, because that aspect of ourselves then activates, becomes enlivened and more stable and powerful. Stabilizes in the physiology, in the circulatory system, in the skeletal system. Skeletal system, so interesting. I've been looking at it a lot this week. All right. All blessings to the ancestors and all of us through them and through us. Hi, Dorothy. Maintaining our point of balance with the body, mind, spirit is a daily, sometimes moment by moment, need for our personal awareness. Taking the high road in moments of disagreement, or rather than reaching for comfort like food, drink, and drug, we return to our center. This is what I am striving for personally, and also sharing with others I work with who are at a loss as what they can do to help. We each take care of our divine selves, joins the collective, bringing balance to our world. Oh, again, beautifully articulated. And I would like to add that this healing that we just did, particularly for this extremely wonderful lady who made this comment, because the healing is working its way into the skeletal system also. The skeletal system is one of the great areas of the body that actually produces resource for the body. So what that means is if the balance is, if it's like all the way to your bones, then what that means is that the body itself provides the comfort in the form of resource. It provides the comfort in the form of hormones and amino acids, and of course all the constituents of blood and all the other materials that the body needs to feel satiated, to feel completely comfortable and self-sufficiently nourished. And in bones, as my dear friend who mentioned to me, that are represented by the sun, and that is also representative of father. So the bones have that quality of that sunlight and father. Hey. So it's great support for that part of the being. Thank you for that question. And thank you for articulating your dedication and devotion to making this the living reality. What happens over time is that it gets so integrated into the physiology that you don't think, oh, I need to find my point of balance. It just is there. And then what happens is nature brings situations and circumstances that test it a little bit, and then you come back to the balance. And every time it gets tested and you come back to the balance, then it gets more stabilized. And after a while, there's nothing that the universe can bring you that will pull you off of that balance. Beautiful. Okay. Dear Dorothy, in general, are nerve damages more difficult to heal compared to cancer cells? Or in other words, is nerve more subtle than cell? Thanks for asking. No, my experience is that anything can be healed. Anything can be healed with equal ease and comfort and grace. Anything can be. And the individual will receive a particular kind of challenge that they're looking at, a particular symptom specifically in order to allow them to draw forward those antidotes from the field of consciousness that address that particular challenge. So if somebody has cancer, they need to bring forward those antidotal energies, such as their light medicines that dissolve, for example. And they can go in and they can create a dissolving effect on the cancer. And there are energies that are so deeply self-loving and self-nourishing that they can go in and have the effect on the subtle energies that are behind the cancer. With the nerves, the beauty of the nervous system is that it's highly plastic, and the brain is another area of the body that actually rebuilds itself. The liver rebuilds itself, the inside of the bones are constantly producing and creating, and the hippocampus produces new brain cells all the time. So new brain cells take about 7 weeks to mature. And during the 7-week period, if there isn't any kind of major stress or problem that crops up, those brain cells will move into the nervous system and will be a support for healing damage in the central nervous system. So that's happening. It's being created. And what we're doing now for everybody who has nervous system issues is providing a light matrix over the hippocampus area that makes for everybody, even if you don't have nervous system issues. It's good to have a hippocampus that's working in good order, right? So this flower of life matrix is positioning and integrating itself over the hippocampus in such a way as to support maximum healthy production of brain cells and protection for that part of the brain so that those cells can ripen to maturity and then be released into the brain. And then going into the brain, and what I'm seeing, I'm looking in there at some of the channels or pathways, nadis, where those new brain cells move into the actual brain itself, that they can be channeled specifically to the areas where damage has occurred, so that those areas are nurtured first and foremost. And I'm seeing that a flow of self-love has to come along with that. So that's coming along. This is why we had to do the heart healing earlier for the ancestors. The ancestors also need to be able to support the healing process through their self-acceptance and self-love. Because if we love ourselves and say, well, I love myself and I accept myself, but if we have an ancestor so many times back who's sitting around not loving themselves, then at the molecular level of the physiology, that self-love is still locked into the physiology. So that needs to undo. The dissolving energy, the same dissolving light medicine can go in there and can help the ancestor dissolve those habits and patterns and beliefs that gripped them in the idea that they were worthless or not valuable people, and support that the heart healing that we did opens up and allows them to accept themselves as the manifestation of divinity. And that right there, I think, is the big key for the ancestors, is that they were living in a world where they were more oriented toward their relative senses of perception. And so they saw a separation between themselves and the source of creation. And therefore, any self-love was basically a selfish act or a narcissistic or vain act. And self-love can flow without restriction when that balance point is stabilized, and it is divine being loving itself through the expression of humanity. Then it's not a selfish act. Then it is the same love that's also given to every other point in creation. And it's completely healthy and it's completely balanced. Bless the ancestors. Blessing all the ancestors. Okay, another question. This is great, you guys. So interesting. So different from last night, right? It's just continuous questions all the way through. It's amazing. Oh, we're almost at our time. Oh, okay. Anonymous, what's going on in Bali? There is a volcano, a major volcanic eruption about to happen. Hundreds of thousands of people have been displaced from their homes. And they've been, unfortunately, the volcano isn't erupting yet, but there's a lot of seismic activity. So what it means is hundreds of thousands of people are just simply displaced. And it's putting a lot of pressure on that spot. No pun intended. So then we have to love the negativity that comes up to us, love it and shine it back to health and wholeness, and help it remember its inclusion in the divine whole. Yeah, basically that, but I feel that it's less of an intellectual process and more of a visceral process. You know, that what we're doing is we are deciding, rather than identifying with darker elements or identifying with lighter elements, which are just parts of the engine, we're identifying with the whole engine. And then as such, the engine, all the pieces and parts of the engine become included in that process. Meet even appearances of negativity, which could be viewed as a form of deep forgetting on the part of each point of creation. Oh, that's beautiful. That's really true, right? The negative parts just forgot that their wholeness of its inclusion, universal divine whole. Yeah, beautiful. With loving, lighthearted reminders that even you, dear, you seemingly dark place or thought or feeling or thing are just forgetfulness of your divine nature. Let me remind you. Like that. Oh, that's so, yes. Because I love this particular person articulates so beautifully. It's the same person that articulated that other point up there. And you know, the way you said that, you brought it back to that visceral level. That really is the feeling of it. It's almost like that prayer from Maharishi, you know, not my words, just the feeling of it. And you just encapsulated the feeling so, so beautifully. And you can see how, in the way he said this, that it's easy. We should be easy. It seems like it should be easy to do that. The hard part about it is that sometimes when something's really super annoying and we feel angry, IQ drops a few notches too, and then it becomes a little harder. But but we're doing it. That's why we get to be humans. We get to practice. That's why life is as long as it is. Plenty of time to practice. It seems that in the world we are seeing a lot of destructive values, but not the constructive values. Why is there a seeming lag in the uprise of the new creative administration? Okay, that is a really good question. I've asked the same question because when we look into the ancient scriptures, it always shows that negativity rises first. And I wonder if this is what I've thought about. Maybe it's because our human physiologies necessarily cause us to experience reality in a linear fashion. And so from the human body level and the senses of perception level, we're always experiencing things in a somewhat more or less linear fashion. And for some reason, it's the nature of the negativity to rise first, and then the positivity comes to meet it. And there are two references that I know of. One is on the field of Dharma in the Gita, right, where Arjuna is sitting there and the two armies are standing facing each other, just about to do each other in. And the Pandavas are on one side with Krishna and Krishna's army, and the brothers, the 100 evil brothers of Dhritarashtra, on the other side, and they blow their horns first. They're like, we're tough, man. And then the good guys blow their horns second. And the other place where I remember seeing that is in that story in the Mahabharata, where the Asuras and the Rakshas and the Devas are churning the ocean of consciousness. That's the engine, right? The Asuras and the Devas are churning the ocean of consciousness. And immortality, the nectar of immortality arises. And who gets it first? The Asuras get it first. And they become immortal first. And then the gods have to steal it back, and there's a whole story. But that's the point, is that it's interesting that it comes out like that, and also the ancient scriptures validate that it comes out like that. And also that's what we tend to experience. We're going along, life is groovy, we're at home, and home is happy, and then all of a sudden we're out on the transformation adventure. And that's the side where we're like, everything that I knew is collapsing, and now I have to restructure everything. So for some reason it happens like that. Beautiful. Okay, here's another question. One more question. We're over time, but it's the last question. So this has been a most fascinating and awesome webinar. They are all really, and I'm truly grateful. Thank you, and special thanks to the person with the wonderful laugh who is with you. Love and laughter. That's my mom. So thanks for being with me. I love you. See you all. See you next time. Next webinar is about transmigration of souls. We'll do a lot of healing work to unblock that roadblock that's stopping the expansion of human reality into the divine levels of creation. All right. Thank you, everyone. See you next time. Bye.